Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Rothschild & Co. Bank here in Zurich. My name is Massimo, and I'm responsible for venture services here. Together with Ben Robertson, CEO of Aperture Capital, we're really excited to kick off this Venture Insights 4x4 Salon. For over 200 years, Rothschild & Co. has been committed to helping clients preserve and grow their wealth. And today we're part of one of the world's leading financial independent groups, operating in 50 countries with a team of 4,800 professionals worldwide. Our Swiss presence dates back to 1968, when the British and French families began offering a comprehensive range of wealth management services in Switzerland. And our services today cover end-to-end wealth solutions spanning discretionary mandates, portfolio advisory, wealth planning, philanthropy, pension and lending solutions, as well as banking and custody services. And our wealth management business is complemented by 5 Arrows, our alternative assets arm, and global advisory, which provides independent corporate M&A strategy and financing advice. And as a family-controlled bank, I think our strength lies in a solid financial foundation and the freedom to act in our clients' best interests. And so with that context, the question in the room might still be, what does that have to do with automation and robotics? And the lake, I think, can be found in venture services. It's a dedicated competence center dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs and investors proactively with our network. We're deeply embedded in the Swiss innovation ecosystem. We maintain an active network and make connections to expertise where it's needed most. For entrepreneurs, those interactions often encompass strategic discussions about pitching a company and finding access to the right investors. For investors, those discussions often encompass complementary deal flow, as well as connections to like-minded investors. That work's incredibly interesting, but as you can imagine, also rather manual and not so scalable. And so we decided to launch a small event series called Venture Insights, of which this is the first. So thank you for being our guinea pigs and getting to know us. And the goal really is to bring together curated groups of innovators, entrepreneurs, and investors so you can discuss and we can make many more connections than we would bilaterally. So we're delighted to be hosting in our halls these discussions and making sure these connections that were created today obviously go much, much further and beyond this afternoon, this evening. While on the kind of topic of facts, thanks to Ben for taking us on the ride for a 4x4 Salon. Thanks to all the speakers for joining us. And with that, I think over to you, Bill. That's all I had to say.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you everybody for joining us on this very warm afternoon in Zurich. So this is a special edition of the 4x4 virtual salon because, as the name suggests, it's normally recorded online. So this is in the second time we've recorded it live. So thank you very much, Massimo, for hosting us for this live edition. And the reason it's called a 4x4 Salon is because we cover 4 topics. We have 4 speakers who I'll introduce in a second. We cover 4 polls, and we also take at least 4 questions from the audience. So on that last point, I would say, please don't be shy. If you've got a question, we'll gladly take more than 4 questions. So if you'd like to ask a question at any time, please signal and Massimo we'll bring you over a microphone. Our 4 speakers. Okay, so let me I'll quickly introduce them. I'll go clockwise here. So Loic is from a company called Coprod, which he describes as being the Android layer for robotics, by which he means that it's a modular programmable interface into robots. Next, we have Amin, who is from a company called LOXO, which is producing autonomous delivery vehicles. And I think I'm right in saying it's you were the first company to have autonomous vehicles on the road in Europe. Now, do you have based in Basel, is that right? But okay, thank you. And next we have Gianluca, who was one of the founders of Sevensense, which produced 3D navigation software for robots, a business that he scaled and ultimately sold to ABV in 2024. And last but not least, and thank you very much for stepping in at the last moment, we have Michael Früh, who is the CEO and founder of F&B Robotics, which develops AI-powered collaborative robots for healthcare, hospitality, and industry. Fantastic. So the 4 topics that we're going to discuss are around the states of autonomous systems, scaling autonomous systems, funding autonomous systems, and then lastly, where we think in the value chain the value will accrue in autonomous systems. So, Mike, I will come to you for the first question. First question. So, my question to you is just about really where we are in the the hype cycle, because I don't know who knows me on LinkedIn, but every time we're on LinkedIn, I'm seeing images, videos of dancing robots and those sorts of things, and like what's real and what's hype. Where are we on the autonomy curve today, and what has crossed into production? What is now in productive use when it comes to robotics?
Yeah, I agree with you. You see a lot of things on the internet, but I think robots doing backflips, cleaning your kitchen, bringing a beer to the table. I think all of that is possible in a demo setup. I think if you record it many times, then once it will work out. And I think we are in an era where you can do a lot, but you're missing the reliability piece of it. So to come from demo to 99.99% reliability, which is required if you go to, let's say, reasonable customers in the industry, life science, healthcare, you need reliability. And we can do many demos, but to reach this reproductivity of these effects, I think we have to solve several challenges, including safety, including precision, including autonomy itself, which is limited to several aspects, for example, movements. So I think you reached nice level of demonstration on single functions very well. But if you want to integrate that into a very high reliability human environment, which is usually chaotic, there are so many, I would say, scenarios that can happen. The robots still fail to cope with all those scenarios.
So, Luca, do you have a view on which of those kind of thorny issues around perception, reliability, and is the toughest to tackle?
I think that the problem is a bit more hidden, and it's the fact that the state-of-the-art research at the moment cannot actually achieve the level of reliability and let's say the added value of this advanced autonomous system. We talk about the general embodied AI, it can be intelligence that can do indeed, make your bed or serve you a dinner, right? I think, and it's really, it's not my word, but from the I was listening to the VP of Google DeepMind, the VP of research, and she was mentioning that robotics is just a very hard problem. And in fact, at the moment, it's just, if the promise of robotics is to have, automate tasks, and automate tasks is about physically cost-efficient task execution over what could be the manual work. We are definitely not there, because indeed the reliability is not there, and it just costs so much money to just train even for a single operation. And traditionally, robots have been working in environments where they can produce or work at scale, right? We're talking about manufacturing, let's say in automotive, most traditionally. And there is where the cost of installation of robots and dedicate like a very precise bespoke programming of robots was then worth the investment, because then he is spread over a huge batch of production. And now with the general intelligence, this most advanced autonomy, the promise is that we would reduce that cost of transferring skills basically for indeed screwing, using a screwdriver to using a hammer. And this is just very difficult at the moment, and from a research perspective. So it reminds me a bit of of the parallel with actually autonomous driving 10 years ago, and it was a hype, and it was always next year that I see the cars in the street. Maybe we won't take a decade or more to actually see something real, but probably you're gonna go through a similar journey.
That's a brilliant segue for you, because why did it take so long to crack autonomous vehicles, especially when it gets into things like trucking, right? Which theoretically have sort of very predictable routes and stuff. And do you think there's things that you can learn from the EV experience that can maybe save time and allow robots to kind of skips, like build on that learning and maybe get to autonomy faster?
I mean, so the perfect transition. Maybe that's you right that in the Italy takes always longer with the expect. So this is a normal cycle, I would say. But you're right, you are there with autonomous driving. So we had a decade of research, and why it took longer? Because if you look to the research, actually he had in our industry a complete reset in 2020, because he had this something AI that's called transfers. So whatever you have been before was reset. You put it in trash, you start from scratch. So, and now with this level of intelligence that we can get in AI, the transforms, then you can see very, very good results here coming about the tens of thousands of the cars in different regions of the world, like China and US and Europe is waking up and it's coming. So what we see is that shift is not going to read a shift of attention from technology and wow to the business case. And when it comes to the business case, then I totally review this case, the trucks, they are making a lot of sense of generally when we are talking about physical AI, the best thing to solve, that doesn't matter if it's on the road or high ground, a robot, the best starting point is repetitive and predictable tasks, because cooking is not predictable. Every time we need something else. In the same with autonomous driving, if you want to do robo taxis, you need to go everywhere. This is the hardest thing. So if you want to solve the harder seats first, this is taking time. But now with the trucking, why although it is a repetitive roads and predictable, why it took so long? This has nothing to do with automation technology itself. This is a pure automotive, mechanical and production house. We need to have a car that is autonomous ready so that you can put your intelligence apart. And when you look what technology is available, Class S Mercedes, and when this technology comes to the Mercedes truck, you're talking about 20 years. So that's the reason that it takes longer when you go to the lower level of technology from the car. So otherwise, the technology is right.
Like, do you agree with this? Because I guess your thesis is a bit that the hard part is the integration of all these technologies rather than the reliability, the data sets. Is that fair to say, or
Half.
well, you half agree, and that's half what is this half
It's
shoes?
both. Yeah, I guess so. I agree with what points said, but my take is a bit different. My other view is that we lack infrastructure. For any tech, even the road that we drive on, it's infrastructure. For the phone, Android, the Linux kernel was also this. For the internet, we had for a while cool people in labs in Stanford, very advanced researchers building mainframes, which is really cool. Doesn't bring much value to you.
Yep.
And it doesn't ping your phone and say, hi, it's my friend around, because it's working in a lab environment, right? And for the tech to diffuse to actual people and to bring value to them, different layers were built up on top of the tech, which was proven to bring value, store data, share bits, whatever you want. And with the HTTP protocol, the World Wide Web, which by the way was also launched at CERN, so it's a local thing, you're in the right place to invest. Then this brought more and more value as people could build the compatible bits of technology which all works together. And then 10 years later, the whole phone infrastructure layers were built up to bring it to the people through a cell phone network. And so I think that in my view, what we need is more infrastructure for robots. And people are focusing on building one humanoid, the most complex robot in the world that can do everything. And so yeah, it's just not ready yet. And if we work well on what sheet of robot has the most value to bring and how do you build it up, I think that the people who focus on the application layer, so the Uber or YouTube, will be able to focus on the integration of our robots with blocks like Legos, the development of a simple app, typically a Roomba, that delivers value. It's in your house. It's not, 10 years away, 10 years ago or 20. And it's very simple, but it brings value. So if you build the right profiles for each application that ends up with good infrastructure, you can bring value today. It doesn't need to wait 10 years.
Does everybody share that kind of view? That's I guess what you're saying is that this robots become almost like thin glides on top of a lot of infrastructure. Do you agree with that?
I think it's part of the problem, I guess. I think to find the solution that you can actually, the problem that you can actually solve. So I think there is the traditional industrial robots behind fences, and then there is the fancy humanoid that can do everything. But in the middle, there is a lot of sweet spots. I think this is where we're tackling the problems. So we're really defining a still complex but doable problem, and we're solving it using AI and using all the robotics technology that is out there. But the customer is not looking for a robot, they're looking for a solution. So how can you solve my problem? And I think to really focus on one, and we're focusing on life science to solve this missing link between different machinery and life science. And then you can solve it effectively and reliably and cost effectively, because a humanoid that can do just everything is not the best cost benefit ratio in any case that I've seen so far. So really finding the right product for the right problem, I think that's the challenge we have as well in robotics.
Agree. And maybe in people that fit this as well. In Europe, we're much more, we don't really want robots in our house. In a world, in Asia, there are much world is this.
Yeah, maybe one sentence that, if you allow, so we started in elderly care homes with our mobile robots, so we have a lot of experience using robots with elderly people and nurses. And you would expect the elderly people, they are very afraid of robots, but they were extremely open. They said, hey, very cool, I have a boring day, and now comes a fancy, cool robot that can help me. So they were really into it. But the nurses, they have been much more skeptical. Okay, what is the robot doing to my people? And so what is it telling the other person? And so there you have to try out a lot of things to exactly find out where are the problems of the users that you might need to address with communication or with the product itself. Yeah, test early and to find out these points, really important.
My take on the infrastructure is, I agree that the infrastructure is important, but also I think it's important to invest in infrastructure and to build the infrastructure once the pattern emerge of where the infrastructure is needed. If we do the paradigm now of what happens with the LLMs, right? And now you just build out of infrastructure, for instance, specifically data centers that ministers that are seen. It's quite impressive, and they saw that there was a clear pattern of what was needed and how to solve. And clearly, data centers are a huge piece of Lego of the entire AI economy. If we look at robotics, I think the situation is a bit more fragmented. I think that you can approach, components, build components. That's going to make it easier. You can add services. That's going to make it easier. But the fundamental block, let's say the fundamental limits of how to address this general intelligence and tell anyone, write a prompt for a manipulator and tie my shoes. It's not, it requires specific research, I think, and it's not about engineering. It's about actually figuring out how to do it. It's the interface layer. What is the interface layer? How do the developers want to use this? What's the most cost-efficient way to do that? And the interface is not clear. And so we're hedging against this by building different layers of interface, very tightly integrated for a bigger subassembly, and try to sell it and see who wants to buy what. But ideally, we need to figure out what makes sense and what can we build at scale in different tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 suppliers that the auto industry has done and in very resilient thanks to this. And then downstream, we'll figure out by testing. And today it's not curious. I don't know layer.
I'm going to move us on to our second topic, which is I feel like my role is mostly just time manage. Again, it's through these different sections. So just move on to the second topic, which is around scaling autonomous systems. I'm going to come to you first because if I'm not saying, where you started this resident, you're already in Germany, you've been scaling quite successfully. What scales linearly and what scales exponentially? And what do you see in terms of economies of scale, unit costs as you expand?
Indeed, through scale, you need few components. In our domains, not the first component is the relation, because if you're blocked by the regulation, we cannot do it. But this is the underbox. We have the regulation here of autonomous driving at the European level since 2022. So we can put your own vehicles everywhere in there. This is gearing. The second piece is you have the right car. So who has the capacity to produce what I call this autonomous vehicles, and they are mainly OEMs. So for us, this is tick on the box. We are now collaborating with one of the largest European OEMs that we are producing the cars according to our instructions. So we call them how to produce cars for us. Then consider technology. So the technology, the scaling is happening here because we have a technology that you are going to remove certain buyers. So when we look to the business case, you are saying, well, when you deliver, because you're mainly doing the delivery and then you're releasing software. So the most important thing is the OpEx, not the CapEx. Because you buy a car and you do tens of thousands or millions of the partials. So your main challenge is the OpEx, and the OpEx is mainly in the rich countries like Switzerland and Germany or Scandinavian countries. You are talking about driver salary. So there, if you can show that you are better, you can sell virtual rides. And this is exactly what you do. So we don't change the business model of our customer. They say, well, you need a car. Okay, the difference is that there are just few sensors of how. And you can get this still from your favorite OEMs, demand box. And then it comes about, okay, I need more drivers and I want to reduce my costs because this is a penny competition between the logistic companies who is the LOXO, Amazon as a customer. So, and when we come with a cost cutter of the OpEx, which is like more than 50% of the total cost, then you can reimagine the whole system and then you can even event the use cases. And this is what we are saying, which is happening because we are giving virtual drivers so they can imagine as much as driver they want. And this is where the savings are because. So we give them licenses that they pay first 2 months. And the interesting thing is, and we have started the company, we have been seeing that our solution here as a replacement of the human. But now we learn that the very large customers, they are seeing as a perfect help for the existing drivers. Why? Because they don't find enough drivers. So the drivers, they have more and more pressure. So they have to deliver more and they cannot. Now they are saying, okay, this boring job of the repetitive rules can be given to these super autonomous drivings, and then they keep the cool part of the job, which is namely the last mile, where the customers say hello and so on and spend time, is kept for the human. So this collaboration, this state between what makes sense for automation, repetitive jobs, and keeping still the human in the loop for the last part of the human interaction, this is something that is working well, and for us is always there.
Just I just want to double click on that because one of the polls we asked the polls in advance on social media. It was about what's the biggest misconception about autonomy today, and people said it was robots replacing humans. So what do you project then in terms of like going forward in terms of the mix of autonomous vehicles and humans still being involved in driving vehicles or supervising vehicles?
If you look at the commercial part of the vehicles,
let's take a very large transportation companies.
So out of 4 drivers that they have hired newly, 1 leave the company and the other one is going to be retired. And this is happening when the volume of the e-commerce and delivery is continuously increasing because all of us here are ordering more and more things online. So for them, it's not about replacing, it's the prosperity. Yeah, how can I keep my biggest customer, like the Galapagos of the world, Amazon of the world, happy even in the next 10 years? And I see I'm losing or I'm not finding a job and they are going to retire and so on. So that's why this is totally a misperception of the automation. Automation is not to replace, it's there to help the customer and the customer of customers keep the growth. And the other thing is that, we also us at the beginning, when we had started the company, we said, okay, it's only about cost, reducing the cost, and this is the main selling RP. Honestly, now it is the second segment because they are saying, okay, with that, we can reimagine completely this whole ecosystem. For example, in our project that they have, you could show we are driving significantly less with the concept of delivery that we have compared to this human we from. So, and then
you get immediately less pressure from the cities. So there are immediately more benefits, more space, less traffic for the city there. So we can really reimagine the industry that haven't changed for the last some years. And it has sometimes honestly nothing to do with the cost. Of course, it's an important thing, but it's coming as a second, sometimes even third on prosperity, but the recoupment of efficiency of the systems. And that's it. What the reason fine on that. But I also want to ask a question about the market, but maybe we come back to that.
As you are, I have a slightly different perspective.
All of that is, yeah.
Yeah, I have an augmented perspective of this, and I think it's always like the premise about automation is basically beating the baseline of human costs, which means that eventually, maybe not now, because now we have limitations in the technology. There is only that much we can do. There is only a portion of tasks we can automate, and we can still increase productivity. And I think that that's how it is now. But if actually the level of autonomy increase, the level of agency also of physical machine will increase, and tasks will be completed 100% by machines, I think this. I think the story changes a bit, and it's not also too much of a future perspective. If you think about in China, there are already the so-called dark factories, and dark factories are factories where you can turn off the lights because there are only robots. There are not people inside, and they are truly built specifically for that. It's a very structured environment where all the tasks are executed autonomously. And you might say, well, we're being a new factory, nobody's losing a job. But as the economy progresses, I struggle to believe that in the future, there will be just a net increase of productivity and there won't be any big thing in the market, I think. And, I say this as a roboticist, and I say this as a, sadist. Because I think it's for sure going to impact. I believe that in the few years from now, it's going to impact society potentially heavily. And but then this becomes a matter of regulators and policymakers to actually address this. I agree. And if I defend my generation as I'm pretty youngest one here, we see it today. There's a lot of my friends have a hard time finding jobs, finishing up PPFL in Cage, 25. And I think that people, as time goes on, can see by the education law in Switzerland doing tertiary education increases every year, again and again. So people don't want the driving jobs. They don't want the picking jobs at the factory. But then the reality is people want all these advanced jobs and enough of them. And I think that there is some value to be brought by bringing robots that not the general person that does everything for you, does your clothes, does everything, no, that does one job specifically to be delivery packages, and then use people's time better and freeing the job not as a delivery driver, but I don't know, an operator of the fleets or a garage robotics. I'm going to the garage robotics fixing scheme to have a really strong resilient system where you have garages that you fix any robots with standardized parts that come on the shelf, a bit in car industry, and there'll be a lot of jobs that people fill lost. But I agree. I think jobs will be impacted. I would like to comment.
I think if you look at the story of technology and society, I don't have an example, but maybe you can find one today, where we say, not in a short period of time, maybe or long period of time. I don't know one single new technology that killed more jobs instead of create. Don't forget that they had people in all lifts, and they were saying, oh, now lifts are autonomous. So all the people that in every single building, they had beyond one people, and before they are going to. Now, this lift industries hires significantly more people for service and so on that compared to the number of people we had in the list just waiting. And the job probably is here. Is not really needed now. For example, like you talk about the delivery, the added value of a human is bringing the package, going into the room, be from the door, hand it over. There's no added of drying, When you get your Amazon package, you don't care to drive how is it right. You just want to make sure that the guy is handing over to you in the right moment.
in the same way. Or you get up to the telecom industry, but I mean, lot of people that they were exchanging the cables when you call. And at that time, you had thousands of people, also instruments, and they will say, okay, now this new routers from Cisco, this is going to keep job. And how about to Cisco? They have made 10 times more employees. Over the time, I don't think generally technology killed jobs. He did just transfer.
If I may, I'm just going to move on from this because I think we could get down a rabbit hole, right? Of like, do we need universal basic income and so on. So just if we get back to the scaling of this for a second, when you were so successful, that it, a Sevensense was leveraging other people's distribution power, right? By embedding your software into other people's robots. And what do you think that's the best distribution strategy in this world?
So yeah, just to clarify, Sevensense we build the eyes and brains of the bio robots. So basically, we give autonomous navigation skills to robots, whether they were for professional cleaning, like cleaning facilities and warehouses and hospitals and schools, or for material handling. Could be autonomous forklifts and moving a lot of pallets in factories again and warehouses. We were using the intelligence layer to some extent. We are component suppliers, and component suppliers, they need to rely on. They don't sell directly to their end customers, or at least we decided not to do it because we're retrofitting basically the intelligence of the robot at the end. Basically, the guy that is managing a factory, it's not feasible. It's not possible, as there are many technical complexities. So we were setting through the robot manufacturers. So this kind of came as natural. Whenever you use that, we could have decided to build in full robots, but then clearly this brings up a different level of challenges also from a capital perspective, and let's say that we founded Sevensense and we started to look for capital when autonomous driving was actually getting out of the hype, and where hardware was basically the enemy for venture capital. So that's why we decided let's focus on a software only company. And clearly, once you get one customer, then you get the full distribution. If you are embedded in one of these robot manufacturers, then you can leverage their entire customer base. And this brings a very nice multiplier in sales.
Like have you that. So we have I think a largely investor audience here, so I'm going to ask you an investment question, which is, so first of all, tell us in your business, are you full stack? Do you manufacture as well as produce software? As how much of the infrastructure is yours? And then the second question is, based on the short conversation we had before, we started, you said that most of your funding, or maybe all of your funding, comes from family offices. Is that deliberate because you're trying to find investors, like patient investors, let's say, whose time horizon matches with the time it takes to scale a hard asset company?
So our background is at the AI lab of the University of Zurich and from the ETH. So we have also a deep tech platform, a robotics platform consisting of a software which controls the whole robot. So we have a software stack that really controls everything in the robot, including the autonomy part of it, and the mechatronics, like gear concepts. And then we also had the challenge or the decision, do we build robots ourselves based on our tech stack? Or do we, let's say, go into OEMs to tech itself? And then we went the first way because we wanted to test our tech first. And then during that journey, we also had to figure out how to scale the whole thing. And we did a lot of proof of concepts on Lighthouse project with famous companies and so on. And this was good. But we realized we are in a global competitive environment. So we are very good in tech. So we are in Zurich tech ecosystem. They're really top. Globally, we could say that. But in terms of scaling, you need muscle, you need power. And then they teamed up with one of the top 10 robotics companies globally. They have over 300,000 of their own robots in the field. They are massive. They sell tens of thousands every year. And then they now sell our product side by side, their brother, with their name, their brand. because no one knows F&P robotics, obviously. We also have zero marketing cost, more or less, because we sell through that other partner, which has a huge marketing division. They also produce everything themselves. They have sales and service. So that's our way to scale. We earn license fees and so on that business. So that's our approach to scale. And the second thing about funding, I think, yes, deep tech takes long. So we're already 12 years in the game. We had in the beginning a little bit the testing phase. We tried out, as I said, in many different verticals. And until you really come from prototype to industrialized product, there's quite a way to go and quite a capital required. And we were lucky enough to find entrepreneurs and family offices that believed our vision, that believed in us as people and in the global market to invest in us, even though they knew that it's not going to be quick luck, so to say. So, and this really helped us through difficult times, COVID, for example, where you couldn't go to customers, or when the hype cycle, someone came down, or the high valuations came down. They also helped us to really survive. So this entrepreneurial spirit we are very happy to have. We have really great shareholder base, which is highly supportive of us, and we are also planning to extend this shareholder base in a capital round that we're doing right now.
Yes, well. So this is a good segue to the third topic, which is really around financing robotics. So I think there's the sort of general premise of this section is almost like, do you think, and maybe you can all take this, right, as a question to open up, which is, do you think in general, hard tech companies, robotics companies, get the capital stack wrong, as in they tend to take too much venture capital and not enough debt, whether it's, whether it's asset-based lending or government grants, whatever form that might take. So project finance, whatever it could be. Is that your sense that in general, like that the equation, the capital equation is like non-optimal? So I don't know anyone's excuse that, right?
Sure. I think you got quite a particular take on this. Initially, I was quite dense investors. I wanted to bootstrap through my IQ. It turns out if you hard work very hard, I don't recommend it. Also, it turns out that investors with the right one can be great help to the team, the mission, because they have their own network, which myself at 26 I don't have. And then they see things in the past and they can pattern match on other industries, which I can't because I was this full. I can look at it in the past, but it lives through its difference. So if you find the right people who can actually help you, in my experience, they can really be a great help. And it's almost more like hiring a team member and not just taking money. If you find the right people, it's I grew my team to 10 people out for free. Actually, they paid me. It's amazing, right? So I think that getting the right investor was very, it's true. They paid me, I was thinking that's right. They're actually new. This solution Joe's is a so the right investors I think didn't really help. I'm convinced of this, and that's where all the LP days in real too. I was in Munich last week during the LP days of one of my first early investors, and they all came after us. It was very wholesome, asking how they could help as the LPs, so they can see me trying to do change the world, and like, well, how can we help you to do that? And there's many different things that they can do. Yeah, but all of us here went through other bigger robotics companies to scale the business. That's something which I have no insurance to, no contact from the network, no insurance at all. So I'm actually I become quite pro-investor for the right ones. Now debts, I was at UES this Monday, and they will not give me any debts. At the CJ Matt.
In your business, you don't have analysis, yeah.
Oh, we do. We do all the wires. We shape. We PCBs. We do all the hardware. We were pretty young, not making much revenue. And they will consider thinking eventually for very nice and come with a smile about debts at $1 million barely, which I know that. Yeah. And so I'm taking what I can take, and this is usually equity-based financing.
Okay. Have you taken that? Because I guess the big difference is you've got assets that are productive, and therefore there's an income share attached to those assets, so you could theoretically, you'll leverage those assets, right? Have you done so?
So the best money is customer money. So we always might still sell as much as we can, as early as we can. Yeah, because the money is good, and you also learn a lot. So that's what we try to make revenue from the very beginning. And then after that, we increased to equity about 30 million. We have a Sevensense foundation. And we have also selectively taken debt, but only at a very low portion, because at some point you have to pay that back. And that can come to a time which maybe is not the best time, and where you're not very liquid. So I think really having a good shareholder cap table with supportive investors for us, next to the custom money, which is most important, has been a good strategy, I think. There are also many opportunities for leasing or venture debt and all of that, but it's very expensive and also a little bit tricky to get. About all these financial due diligence, you have to really do a lot of paperwork for getting it, and then it's also very costly. So for us, it hasn't been the best fit at the moment.
Yeah, do you have a view on this? And it sounded like when you were speaking earlier on, it sounded a bit like you almost pivoted, right, away from being very hard, like having too capital intensive business to being more of a software business because it was hard to get right capital set.
It was part of the process at the beginning. Eventually, we actually built our own sensor. We had a multi-camera sensor because we couldn't find any market. He had expertise to make it, and that was basically the key ingredient to our technology that was making our funnels navigation superior to everything else around. We really didn't want, because we were a bit scared about it, and indeed, BC didn't like hardware. Now it's the new mode, seeing that software is commodity. So I would say, I think robotic startups have a long path towards profitability and perhaps like profits, clearly, because you have to pay back. So if you add an additional way of burning money by the interest, doesn't fit really in the equation. And at Sevensense, actually the year before the acquisition, we were in the finalist of the Swiss Economic Forum Innovation Award. And because we were select among the finalists, we got a special stand, and we were actually able then to get some debt. This is kind of got with both like a due diligence from experts. But this is, we never really, so also their position came short after. So.
And then question, I see you've learned a lot into partnerships, right? There's a way to sort of help with funding, and you've taken equity funding. Any debt funding?
I think generally it's we talk about BC, family office debts, and so on. I think this is really, for me, it's most important to find the right mindset rather than like tag the right instrument, financial instrument, because if you are doing hardware, you suffer. But if you do hardware and you want to convince VCs that they have made money in 2000s with the software, they will know your money and obviously can't. So for us, it's just also been how we can be more efficient. We found our sweet spot, a combination of everything. So we have VC investors, but we have also very large family offices that are coming from our domain. Not from the technology side, but from the use case. So they understand why this is needed. So for them, they are building their future generations business. And but also, I think it's also depending where we are in your company journey. At the beginning, yes, so family office is great. But after a certain point of time, you need distribution channels. As you said, you need muscles, and you need to go to the larger looser companies. And so for us now, here closing route, and we found birds a much better situation with a very large American, very Fortune 500 companies, investors, rather than a big VC, because with them we can really scale worldwide. So I would say for me, it's just a matter of finding the right mindset. It doesn't matter. It's a VC, it's a family, all these. Just we need a mindset during the up and downs, and to make sure that the ultimate goal of company is understood. But also motivation. I mean, if you are a type of founders that you are absolutely looking for an exit as soon as possible, then most likely you go for the VC. But I'm a second-time founder. I sold my previous company to a Fortune 100 company. So the far phase that I once. So I'm having a reality plan. It's also a personal question as
But yeah, I think when it comes to the hardware, the always forget that the still large companies are first on the hardware. So and in Switzerland and socially Europe, I would think socially in that region we are excellent this hardware. And I don't understand why Switzerland is nothing but in hardware, because this is the future. The software with all the AI and so on becomes bit more and more commodity. And at the end of the day, you need very highly reliable hardware. And I think we are best as at first maybe, yeah. And I don't know why we concede a lot of VCs, family offices, whatever depths that they are handling us in hard. I hope I would see.
Okay.
And
We're going to go to the full section.
so on the surface, the thing that we want to dig into is where in the value chain would is emerge. Loic, make the case for the Android layer. So what you were suggesting earlier on is everybody would build on that layer, and therefore I guess it becomes an aggregation point, and it creates a lot of value in that layer. But do you think there's a risk that you get squeezed between the component makers on the one side and the application providers on the other?
So I agree. The case is pretty easy to be made. Basically, let's keep our focus on what actually brings value to their funds. And if you work in the Windows, you focus on being Windows or painting the walls with a great paint gun that's very straight, that mixes the paint as well, that cleans itself, doesn't want to store. That's the actual value of the company taking the paint for us. Making a motor controller, an actuator, a power system is not exactly your most. And if you spend so much time working on that layer, it's time and energy and cost, not that working on a bin robots. And so is every will use our layer. I'll pray that to every should use our layer. Why? Because the competitor who's also painting, who is using our layer, maybe has 15%, like if you sell them a quarter of a bond of a robot, and it's a bit more offensive on the pure and the chain component cost. They will spend a year, 2 years, 3 years reinventing the stack, like every company does today when a competitor is using us. For the robot, if affects an increase in price, in 6 months can be on the market, creating money for the customers. So I think at some point, if this does work out, they'll end up doing bad and going like, this is not fair. They're cheating. They're not building a robot. They're buying some assemblies and just making it with that and iterating. And again, back to the interface layer and easily adapting the shape of the robots to find the optimal painting robots. Maybe it's 2 paint guards. Maybe it's a symmetric one that doesn't fall over. It is not you bend into the elevator and have the arm stowaway. I don't know. But as long as you're iterating on the hardware, it takes a lot of cost and time to reinvent the whole thing. And either you own it in-house and you're fully vertically integrated and you can do this, which means it takes 5 years to have anything else, or you buy from assemblies and it's never reliable. It's always a jumbled mess of stuff which sort of works and then breaks, and then breaks from time to time. You don't know why, because you can't deal with this thing. That's this voltage, you can't measure it. You have to need your own bus and your own sensor. Wrong story. The hardware is simple. It's we all focus on one part on the stack, and enables companies that focus on their vertical, on their value add, and just use bits that are commoditized. I can keep this worse. China will be making the hardware as well. And we need to make open. People who make hardware is compatible with the stack, great. Maybe it sells more availability. And if you have some great features, and that's where the simple part of the answer of your question comes in. Where lies the value? How do you finance this? And I think there's many things that companies need, and not to make the robot work. That's not be sold to the price, but to make the robots reliable, certified on the market, and avoiding all this time of SIL 3 to 4 certification we want to go through, and you can pre-certify component assemblies by making some cool Swiss advanced components, which today I think it will take a while for China to make as well. And these bits can be sold as a freemium, just software, with a button layer to say worse, or get in just worse. Free, we work for the community, the communal good, it's communism. And we just make the whole robotics stack compatible. And so I think the value will come mostly on these advanced features that companies need. That's where you can stay defensible while building this horizontal layer.
Okay, I'll give. Yeah, that's the research I'm gonna say too.
Yeah, I just would say that here in Switzerland, we're very good in managing complexity. So we are really good in making a complex world sometimes we squeeze it, and then in the end we create fantastic product. And when we asked ourselves where are we really good? It's about the technology layer of those autonomous robots. So this is our core competence. But then we add on top of that our engineering skills when it comes to physical AI. So we combine our tech stack with the expertise of actually building a robot. And this together really solves a lot of the complexity issues our partners and customers.
So you're arguing that things need to be perfectly integrated.
Not completely, I think, because it's also very use case specific. And I think you have really to pick those elements that then are really needed for the solution. I'm not sure if that's the case, that this is always the same kind of things that you need. But I just wanted to add we outsource production, for example. We are not good at production. We outsource the whole thing. And we are not good in sales and service. So we found a partner. So really to focus on your core competence and then really manage the complexity to create a product. Instance, that's our take on.
And in your business, the distribution partners you have, what is their relativity compared to yours? Like, because the reason I asked that, I mean, you have to go specifics, right? But just in the poll that we ran in advance of this meeting, that the people are buying the only recruit to those that have the enduring customer relationships. So, do your distribution partners who have the ultimate customer relationships, are they generating more value? Is more value accruing to those guys than you is the ideal? So who's making the most margin? Your distribution partners?
Okay, good question. So, I mean, in the end, it's about the absolute margin. I get this question often. So what do you do? So we could either grow linearly, then have a bigger margin per robot, let's say. Well, when you look at the absolute margin, so number of robots sold times the margin, we are much better off in much shorter time going through a distributed partner, because you need to reach scale in terms to be cost efficient and in the end compete global and be innovative. So to me, it's a very clear choice. So the absolute margin we are able to increase. The I would say margin per robot is smaller.
Okay, similar question to you, Gianluca. I mean, you sold your business to AUB, and I believe it's now being sold again, right? And is that because ultimately who wins is the company that has distribution? Like, what did you sell?
So we sold a fundamental technology to enable a key value proposition of ABB's offer. So their strategy, like given that we had wrote customer portfolio, and they all like our technology, and you decided to go through with the risk and strategy. When it comes to then retaining the value, let's say when you then sell and you send it to a distributor, I think that in the end, there are two aspects of it. One is what is the market pool, and the other is your substitutability. On our case, I can say that all our technology was has been always evaluated by multiple robot companies, and they all say like, this is the best thing you ever tried. If I have to say what was one of the challenges we had is that the end customers were actually conservative. If you think where mobile robots are used in automotive, automotive factories that use technology that is 20-year-old when it's automated. And, if you block the line, it takes millions an hour. It costs millions an hour of liability. So they're very careful when they choose new technology. And being the new entrant, there is a bit of a gap. So we had a bit of this resistance. But I think that there are cases where even when you are at the bottom of the supply chain, look at NVIDIA, right? You can definitely make good margins, but
Right. Amin, then it fairly scientifically, what if you think about the existing stack, if we go to that, where do you think you might see more or less commoditization in that stack?
I think now we are talking about the hardware challenge that's for in 3D car also could be a team order study right now. So if you go to the automotive industry, you have only one car which is, you call it drive-wire wireless, the term was released by correction line, and it's the Cybertruck. So, but this technology will go over the production lines, all the car manufacturers. I think the predictions is that still the biggest margin will remain with the technology, because this you are capturing the OPEX and you can only relate that cut your OPEX by half. So I want a big chunk that's just small, and you had to update system keep it. Where we see a shift right now in this autonomous system, the operational layer. So the everyday job, how the people interact, how I charge it, how I tell it go party, and so on. The basic things is underestimated. So now there are companies are working billions and building the operational layer, which is technically not very far, but it's a smart move. So from the investment perspective, that's a nice opportunity as well. And I think, but this type of technology until maybe 5 years will become a commodity. So what remains, it's basically, I don't know, today back to the basic. So who has the volumes to deliver? It's a volume business. So that's also why you see the partnership, sometimes the video partnership is always in the intention of bring the volumes, because it's a volume business. So in the last 10 years, you're already, okay, who has more data? No one asks the question, well, who's the company who would make it happen with less data, you know? So, but now we start to ask the type of questions. So over the time, I think when you have optimized everything and there is not a lot of R&D, either you have the volume, can you keep there worldwide, or you are not. So this is where I think we need to grow back this partnership to bring the masses, but always having this volume mindset, not so functionality.
Okay, we're almost at time, so I do have a follow-up question for you, but if there's any question from... Okay, wonderful. Last question. Thank you so much, sir.
I'm wondering about these, let's say, I can do a backflip robots, which is which we call demos, which China does a lot. So where is, in your eyes, China versus the US versus Europe / Switzerland? Because we see a lot more of demos from China, but I'm pretty sure they're not that advanced as they look. So where are we?
Who will tackle that?
I can give at least one part of the interpretation. So I think what China has been showing is truly impressive. I think overall the Chinese New Year festival with all these robots made the headlines, and it was truly impressive. Now the main point is that that's not autonomy. So it really depends what you want. That's great for entertainment, and but I think that the biggest gap and the biggest misconception for the public opinion is that when they see this humanoid making a backflip, and they actually think that, oh, if he can do a backflip that I cannot do, then I must cook wonderful dishes. And no, that's not the case. Because it's trained on an extremely repeatable task to do always the same thing. And the intelligence that at least the one I was referring to comes from the variety of the environment, comes from the multiplicity of circumstances and disturbances that might affect one's work, which cannot be accounted at the moment in an efficient way. Then where do China is investing tremendously into this, and they have a national program that really pushes into this direction. It's a very brute force approach, and definitely they're doing some progress. But again, if Atlas from Boston Dynamics was doing also backflips a few years back, without using much of deep learning, it was actually in the MPC was a traditional control, and advanced but still relatively traditional control technique. So I think it's important. It's difficult. I can also understand it's difficult from the general audience to disambiguate between what is what. But there has been a lot of hype that has been driven by this entertainment robotics. And also that was an insane amount of money go into like a lab of humanoids and so on in the US. And now they're probably actually, I would say from a technological perspective, they are leaving. That's also, it's very difficult to say. I think that the most remarkable example is from Fear AI company in the US, making humanoids. And they have shown that for a week, a robot could do the work of parcel handling, which is a fairly simple, but it's a very long horizon task. And that was kind of a new thing. As a response, it was shown that in China, they already do it at scale. But what does this mean? It's like, it's also hard. There is a lot of technological warfare in the sense that is kind of difficult to really see. But what it's clear that at least for the time being, there is no robot that if you ask to cook a rosti, can do it properly.
But you think we can like catch up in Europe with states where we're with Silicon Valley or however you want to call it? Like on the autonomous side, on the really autonomous side, not on the...
And the autonomous side, actually, now the requirements are different in different markets. Because if you say, well, yeah, in the production line, or reliability is not high, it's okay, it's accepted culturally. And second, it doesn't cost me to correct the errors manually. Then you can do it with a certain quality, and then you create that and impress Europeans and in by volume. But if you dig deeper and you know what are the market requirements for Switzerland or Germany, they expect your system to work in a very, very highly reliable manner. And this is a layer that we barely talk in general audience, but we are doing generally in Europe very good. So, and I think there's not a lot to catch up, but over the time, we are going to be the lead of the day for certain use cases because of the cost structure, which are very high in Europe. We need a very, very reliable robots. Therefore, we are big. Thank you. Therefore, we are going to count more on the reliability than this power factoring Mac flips or the costs are low. I think in the different markets we look different.
Just if anything, please on the hardware, because I think if I may just rephrase the question, from my understanding, in the whole autonomy stack and Robotics stack, we're more advanced. Here, literally here, Zurich. I'm gonna sell the RSL and Mark Woodruff's lab and the Rye recently. We're more advanced, more organized, as you said, with Boston Dynamics, and the policies are trained here in Zurich. And they're not just doing backflips, they're doing round-off backflips. And more smoothly too. And so what China does, they're just, and by the way, they're using our stack, the Western stack train the robots, which is mostly NVIDIA XM, which we also use in-house because we also make our own robot policies. And so it's a Western stack. What they're better at that we cannot compete on at all is the cost of the hardware robots.
Yeah.
A humanoid for £6,000, like you introduced, no one in the Western world will do that. No one. But we are really good at some things. Typically, I'm going to sell some more Swiss companies. Max and Lawyers is very good. They shit actuators, the hexagon humanoid is built with their actuators. The cost is much higher. It's also better from my understanding and what I've been able to see too. But still, it's an order of magnitude difference, at least. And this, I think, we will not be able to compete with. I'll try some of the whole hardware full cycle robots. And if you get to a layer with autonomy is in commoditizement just works, then it becomes an issue of how much can you scale down the price of the hardware. But today, I think we're not there just yet. We are absolutely ahead on the training side. And on the hardware, we're keeping up quite well, also because European industries are powering a lot of the robots around the world. Typically, the motor controllers, the bits that actually spin the windings. There's a lot of companies in Germany, one big one in Spain, who is selling to companies all over the world with themselves integrated intact instead of humanoids, and these are Western stacks. So we're competing hard and working harder to not become irrelevant. That sounds hope.
maybe just one small thing to end. I think I'm not worried about technology. We are fantastic in research and startups here and in the US. And I'm not worried about that, but I'm worried about supply chain and also supply chain power China has against all of us. So magnets is one of the famous examples, rare earth and this kind of thing. So China is extremely, low cost. Yes, that's very true. But also how fast they come from product idea to industrialized scale is incredible. And only China can do that. They have the best production engineers. They have the complete supply chain in their country. So I would worry here. And then we in Europe and in the US pick up on really reshoring a part of the supply chain and getting this, and let's say, dependence on China down.
I think we have another question. Rami, so also we see here, I worked 4 years ago with company, robotics company, Pick and Place, very standardized with post office and so on. Today we had the example of a human that can do the task almost as fast as a human being. Do you think there's still a place, case robotics, and all the money flows in there? Is it only going to be humanoids anymore? Because we don't need the cheaper, somewhat, not really. I mean, let's see where our Unitree is 8K, you said 6K. Tesla wants 48K, something like this. So, yeah, as an investor, would you go case by case or generous robotics?
I'm a fan. So I believe the following. So there is a big difference between software and robotics, and is the real world. And the real world is fragmented. And I think that just sometimes it's possibly how over-engineered that we have to make some solutions that make absolutely no sense. If you look at a specific demo I was talking about, you have a humanoid with hands. Is not using hands, could have had just the wrists, was completely 100K appendices that were completely useless for shit taking or class B, and probably they use it for a few hours, they were gonna overeat, or I don't know. There's gonna be a process of where this robots, the hardware is gonna get mature, and then there's gonna be a way to scale general purpose robotics, aka humanoids or humanoids-like robots, to an extent that they can cover a very broad set of tasks. But at the same time, I think there is still place and for very specialized niche applications where you need a very specific shape, where you need a very efficient way of dealing with a task that simply is not necessarily what the human would, especially if you have cases where you have fairly large batches of operations where you can still afford to build a hub solution.
Which is better or cheaper? Because I would argue with the amount of humanoids that Elon Musk says are going to be built, the cost will come down. And then the case-by-case robotics where you need 1,000, but you never get there with even though he does need legs, but he will have legs also just for taking place.
Yeah. So cars come down to be very, very cheap. Then if you think how expensive they were, right, when they were invented. So it's very hard to go against his claim. I still believe that the complexity and the over-engineering might at some point need a trade-off, so that they need to actually be better to have something simple, and it's going to be cheaper, it's going to have less maintenance, it's going to be faster at doing the task. So I think that what robotics design is about.
I agree. I think in those spaces it'll be specific.
I would agree for the next 3 to 5 years, but as an investor, you want to think long term. And if the humanoid robot costs 10K,
Or maybe I can just add that the technology overlap between humanoids and, let's say, humanoids light is very big. So the sensorics, the models, the arms, so this is really, we use the same things, the same gears, the same animals that are used in humanoids, but we give it a more functional form factor, and which makes it much more competitive for a given use case. So there is really these two let's say, hypotheses generalist AI models that can run every humanoid. I don't believe in it. And also a humanoid form factor which solves every problem in the best way, because there's such a high technology overlap which can be used similarly efficient or more efficient in a cheaper, easier, safer form factor. That's why I believe these form factors will win. And when it's just read interviews of, for example, Rodney Brooks, he's a professor from North America, very experienced. He also says the humanoid concept will probably go into more practical form factors using the same technology and AI that is also applied in humanoids. It will take some time. Maybe in some point in time, no one can say when a humanoid will be better. But there are many problems like fingers and tactile and safety, battery, all that kind of stuff, practical real-world problems. But it can be solved quicker, cheaper, faster, based on the same tech and other form factors. It's mine.
So your prediction is in 7 years we will have a specialized robot at the post office, just changing the things that the robot did in test, and not the humanoid.
I think maybe test will be much more efficiently done. I think example, believe Rick you can hire, or even 3D the store, you can hire feed humanoids from China, 100 of them, and give them brooms. And they can also feed the store. Yeah, it's great. 60 joints, very complex hands through the floor. Does it make sense? Is building a Roomba, but cut it, you'll sell a million, you'll sell maybe 10,000? Sure. Or even we'll clean the windows. Same thing. You want to put a harness on a humanoid and give him a spritz bottle and have him clean the window going down. Maybe they'll kick the window and break it. And then you gotta fix the window too. How about building a robot for that application? I think this mindset can be applied so many times that even if you have way less volumes, I think using the hardware production purpose brings way more value, because it's whole superior or general purpose robot point of view. It's like the phone ecosystem. Phones have to go in your pockets, so they're limited in size, and they have to connect you with the internet. So they have big screens, so you can see many pixels. Cool. And robots, people think about it like phones. They're saying, we'll build one, have one firmware platform, and sell software on top of the hardware. But robots can do many things that phones can do. They can be any shape and sizes. And so limiting it to one form factor, because you'll be able to make more and benefit from into the scale faster, in my opinion, makes no sense. And I want to go win. I'm betting my life and my work on the other option. So I think I can debate against myself. Where it will win or it could win is the house pool. Because people can buy 60 robots, one to iron and one to clean, and they don't have the amount of windows of brick molds to be built, which can spend all day, that, of an industry will have. They have, 5 shirts to iron. And if it's waste order, who cares? You have 5 shirts to iron. And so in this case, having just a simple mobile manipulator makes more sense. I'm against humanoids, because in the later dangerous, if you have a child next to the robot that falls, well, it kills the child. This is game over, no more humanoids. I think a mobile base with battery as heavy at the bottom of it makes more sense. In the household, I see more meaning for general purpose, because you have only a few things to do for each task and many tasks. But in the industry, I don't agree.
Would you as well?
Cool. I just wanted to say, because at the moment humanoids are built on maple and hard gear, so they're very heavy, so I believe before humanoids get into every household, we need to have easier hardware, lightweight, let's say with soft robotics kind of things that solves the safety problem. And there we have also a long road to go, because these humanoids at the moment, they're very heavy, very energy inefficient. Even for standing, they need energy. So, and if they don't have energy, they fall off. So these practical things with these electro motors and stuff makes it difficult to bring them into every household, is my belief. I think we need softer, lightweight, different technologies on hardware.
I think all that remains to say is that, thank you guys, that was a very interesting panel, a very wide-ranging panel as well. I mean, we're way beyond just talking about scaling, autonomy, and so on. We got into geopolitics, we got into the future of humankind. So thank you very much for your insights, and thank you all for being here in person for this live version of the 4x4 Salon. And lastly, thank you, the Rothschild team, for hosting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.